So we are recording now. So basically, this is going to be a Q&A for the Kyber Control system. We'll go through the introduction of the system. I know most of you guys have seen it. And then we'll do questions can be asked throughout. Nobody's muted unless there's any background noise or something. And then just ask your questions as we go through the presentation. So welcome, everybody. All right, so I guess most of you saw the system. Has anybody not seen the PowerPoint presentation or want to go through that? So everybody's seen it. So I mean, we'll go through a quick thing if I can share it. Okay, so everybody can see the screen.
Yeah, good.
So again, this does use, and I had some people fight back for me saying, using industry standard 2.4K. And what I meant for that was like, this is what they're using for filming productions and for anything that's done live in the parks or anything that we do for character meet and greets. Want us to have the 2.4. The only one we haven't had to have that for so far is BB-8. Just because hasn't been a system out there that uses the RC transmitters up until Dave has had his, and we've actually used his in there once or twice. So what we've done, and this does work with any receiver that can use S-Bus. So one of the things is that Spectrum doesn't do S-Bus, but there is a workaround for doing that. And that you can use a system or a receiver that's called an Orange RX S-Bus compatible receiver. They have several, and there's some workarounds on actually getting those to work with S-Bus. So I'm not sure how reliable those are. I haven't checked that. I've worked one and have one working, but haven't checked it like out in public or for an extended period of time to know how reliable those receivers are. The one thing we have done a lot of testing with is the Far Sky transmitters. Those work great. We've done some with Futaba. And then, if there's any others out there we need to test, if someone wants us to test, we can do that along the way. So the main thing for this was for us to be able to add 15 buttons, which you can't see that right now, but on the remote, be able to add 15 buttons to a transmitter to be able to have something that I can, if we're operating in a bag or something where we can't see the remote, we're just working by feel, then I can feel those buttons on that center pad and be able to fire those sounds or motions to add. And the main thing was for Wally. He just has so much interaction, so many moving parts that we had to automate some of that stuff. So in the beginning, Stefan and I did something that would just work for Wally. It was just a pre-wired controller that was a separate battery system, used a different RF transmitter. We had a lot of issues with it, just being able to stay connected. It was just like Bluetooth and some different things that we couldn't keep it connected all the time. So we decided to come up with some other way of doing it with the RC, and then we thought about coming up with the potentiometer button bank, basically. So came up with that and then started using that, tested it out, worked great. And then we thought, well, I mean, this would be cool to have for all the other builders out there if we can get it where, we can manufacture it and make it easy for someone to use. And then Stefan had already been working some stuff with BB-8 on the web page interaction of programming. So then we added that in, and then, that's where we are now. This thing does accept 5 volts to 36 volts, which is really cool. Does have reverse polarity protection. So I've plugged everything in as many ways as I can and can't actually kill the thing, which is pretty cool. Except there are a couple things on the opposite side. If you do apply power from the receiver and apply power to the receiver, you will burn something up there. So that'll be all in the detailed instructions we come along a little bit later on. You can provide power to smaller droids. So if you have 1 or 2 servos that were doing a couple of things, you could actually drive those off of this through the receiver Anything below 2 amps, you just don't want to max over 2 amps.
Could it power Pi?
I'm not real sure. I mean, if it's not pulling over 2 amps, then yeah. And if it runs off 5 volts, because the only outputs will be coming, you'd have to power it. So you would run through the Kyber to the receiver, and then you could run power out of the receiver to the Pi.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if it runs off 5 volts, I think it could probably power one of those. Which that's something we didn't think about. So that's something we could look at adding a port for powering a Pi.
That would be kind of cool because I have to use this just for the LED screen that I have on the little one. So I thought it'd be cool if it could power this thing.
Okay.
But
That's something we can look at doing. And then if there's something we need to add in, if there's a command or something we can send, by adding that to the push button, we're looking at doing that sort of stuff too in the future to be able to activate, a couple of different things on what's the other R2 control system, Arduino. So we'll look at that stuff later.
is the SD card that goes in this thing only for sound?
The SD card is only for sound that goes in this one. Correct.
Yeah.
Unless we come up with another use. So, I mean, we could read data from it. So, let's see. So,
Matt, sorry, Matt, but it won't be possible to use the SD card for anything else.
Okay, besides
directly plug in the DF player. So it's not something that the main controller sees.
Okay, cool. So there you go. The programmer speaks. He keeps me straight. He's like, no, you can't do that. But he does give it a good try. So the next thing we wanted to do is I'd seen a lot of people struggling with a lot of the systems that are out there on trying to getting them all wired up, getting the receivers or the controllers to be bound with the system. So we were looking at it and then, trying to program sounds, getting the sounds to work. So we tried to combine everything we could think of into this little board. But then we also wanted the interface to be very user friendly, to basically take no programming skills. So you can select, and we'll go through the controller a little bit later on, but now you can play through all of that through Wi-Fi connection, which can be turned on and off. I've been working with Nyla on, making sure we're kind of safe on the cybersecurity side of things, of people being able to hack this at a con or whatever. So basically by tying up another channel on your remote, you can actually turn the Wi-Fi on and off. So if you're at a con, it's not, you can hit it so that it's not on unless you want to turn it on and change something while you're there.
You only need it to make a change. You don't need Wi-Fi on all the time to run.
Right. You just needed to make a change, and it's better to have it off anyway. That way it's not using the processor and all the things that it's doing there and heating the chip up. So it's better just to have it off when you're not using it.
It's the same thing for the credentials. You can change the default name and the default password to something else. So it adds a bit of security, but just turning off the Wi-Fi is the best way to do that. Anyway, since you will be rolling the Droid, you won't need any Wi-Fi into it. So just disable it and that's it.
And I know that's been one of the questions that a lot of people have had is, are you using the Wi-Fi to control any part of the Droid? And the answer to that is no. There's zero interaction between the Wi-Fi and the Droid itself operating. So what else? We did incorporate the sound card, which you can use up to, you could add thousands of sounds. So that was really easy. We added the 1/8" audio jack for easy connection. That's the jack you'll want to use if you're going to any amplifier. We did find out we can use this there's a powered amp on the DF player where you can attach one speaker to that. So and I've used it with the 39.1, and I took and just put a transducer, just glued a transducer in the bottom of the Droid, and I was really surprised at how loud it was. And we tried to go through and make sure, I mean, running a good clean 5 volts, that we're trying to get as much power to that onboard amp as possible. We did add volume control to the transmitter itself. So you can use that either on a 3-position switch or use it on a one of the twist pots on the controller itself. That's the way I recommend, because you get the full range of volume with that. And then we do have the ability to use the equalizer settings in the DF player. And that's an active change. So you can be playing a song, find out the best, the equalizer setting for your setup so that you're not overpowering your speakers, so that you get a good clean sound.
Quick question for the volume. Is there any mod that needs to be done for the remote for that, or it just works?
0, you just program the channel for that, and it reads the position of the pot and controls
Awesome.
through that. So no mods there. We did add the ability to pass through control of the servos through the Maestro. So you can use any channel on the remote to be able to pass through and control either one servo with that channel, or you could control, you know, if you had 2 24-channel Maestros, you could move all those servos at once with one channel. Well, we can't do that because we didn't add the control. We were going to do that. We didn't add the control in for that. But that's a future upgrade we're looking at doing. Over-the-air software upgrades. So anything we do with this current hardware, unless we change the hardware in the future, for like adding additional connections like Brian was talking about adding for the Pi, then any software upgrade can be pushed through the web app that we have. So there's no more connecting cables up. It's the same thing for programming. You don't have to hook any cables up, and it's another reason we did that, not having to open the Droid to reprogram for a sound. And then we'll be doing, so we go along, we'll be adding different things like this as far as the way we wire the Droids up. And this is something simple I used for the 39.1 Droid. And where you do what this does, you can see there's a couple of things that we've added in that I add in for safety. And a lot of this comes from the stuff we do for the industry, is just having the ability to kill the Droid's drive system completely from the transmitter. So we use Pico switches and battle switches from dimensional engineering, and I'll show that a little bit later. And we use solid state relays now instead of the automotive relays for transferring power there to the drive systems. All right, so any questions so far?
Hey, Matt, how many droids, well, actually I got 2 questions. How many droids can you physically control with the Kyber, with the RC? Because I want to try to buy as few transmitters as possible.
Yeah, so you can use one transmitter for all of it. So like I know and you can probably do this on, Dan can answer a little bit more on some of the spectrum and stuff, but on the Far Sky stuff, you can put as many models as you want to in there.
Yeah,
so
I think my IX is over 100 now.
Yeah, so what you'll just have to have is you'll need the base control system for the Kyber for each droid, or have the ability to move the Kyber from one droid to another droid.
Just make sure you back them up to SD card.
Yeah.
I learned that one the hard way.
Oh, yes. Use your SD cards for your training.
So you're saying you could have one, RC transmitter that you modify to have the transmitter portion with, whether it's the 15 button or the 10 or whatever, and then you could, have the portion that goes inside the droid. You could have different ones of those in different droids, and then you're just switching your model on your transmitter, and it will work with each of the different receivers.
Yeah, the big thing there, what you're going to have to remember is just your button orientation. I mean, you start getting into muscle memory at that point, and if you can have the different things programmed or you have where we're looking at also doing what I've done for the ones I have is have place cards that I apply over the 15 button remote, so I know what each droid does. I just get memorization of that, and it would depend, it would depend on the Kyber's reading of the controller, which should read the same exact thing, because the one thing in the Kyber, so setting this up, if we go here too, so this is unique on the system too, is that, so if we go to the main page,
Hold on.
it can tell you how many buttons you want to use. So if you
We don't see, Matt, we don't
Yeah,
see,
we're not seeing you switch the pages on the PDF
we're still looking at the PDF.
or the PowerPoint. I mean,
you
Yeah,
don't see the PowerPoint changing.
there you go. Now it just changed.
Okay, cool. So if we go to the main page, you can see here that if you don't have any maestros, you just put 0. And this is an interactive system, so whatever you select here affects what you see on the button pad page. So if I didn't have any maestros selected here, you go here, then all of these are going to be, they won't be there. So the only thing you would see would be just the sounds. So you don't have to worry about entering the wrong data in the wrong spot. So, and also if you select 10 buttons is what you have, then you go to this system, you're only going to get 10 here, so that you know those, if the last 5 won't appear. If you had 20, you could do 20 if you wanted to. So, and then, so that makes that system. And then we also added a button in here we call stop all, which is stopping all functions. So if you have Wally's arm moving up, all of a sudden the kid runs in, you need to kill that entire motion. You just hit that button and it would kill the entire motion and sound of that. And then you could hit, just return that movement, just hit it again once the person gets out of the way to continue that motion.
So that I have a question about that. So let's say you do have some sort of animation programmed within the Maestro and you kill it for whatever reason. Does it just stop moving? Is it more of a pause button, or does
No, it stops the entire motion. So it is whenever you hit the button. And what I've done is I use one of the positions I have to be like a static position of the droid. And then I'll hit that button and it returns everything back to that static position.
So then your future animations they're not screwed up, because it almost is like you resetting everything. Is that what you're saying?
Right, going back to that standard. But the way the Maestro works, if you had that particular arm up and then you stopped it halfway and you did the right arm up, the left arm's just going to stay in that same position because it didn't call for movement. But if you called for that opposite arm, it's still going to read where the servo is and then basically it'll go back to that first position you asked the servo to be at. So the bad thing about that, it's usually a really jerky motion to get back to that point, and then it'll start the animation. So whenever I do a stop all like that, I always carry it back to the static position. To make sure that, especially if you're with Wally, there's so many collision points on him. For different things.
it's more like a safety feature than, let's say you're starting a sound or you're playing a song and you want to stop it. Just click the stop all and it will stop the sound because it's only the sound that has been activated. But let's say if someone just ran into the robot, then you want to kill every movement. That's the way to do it. Then add a second button, maybe to have a reset all or default position to all the servo. Then it will start from there.
The individual buttons, do they go over each other? So let's say you have a song that's for one button, but then you want to have talking sound effects. If you press another button, does it play over what's already playing, or does it stop the previous one?
It would stop the previous one. The way the DF player works, it can only play one at a time.
Okay.
It's possible we could add, and we'd have to, talk with Stefan. If you added 2 players in there, could we do? But I'm not even sure if you can do that. If you can address individual DF players.
What about the movement? If you activate a button for a certain movement and it's in progress of that movement, and you hit a different movement button, will the first one finish or will it cancel it out? And
It
It-
won't do
it will-
anything until
yeah.
it will continue that motion, because on the motion side, we actually look to see if there's a motion active. And if there is, it won't allow another motion to happen.
Okay.
But you can play a motion and then play a sound on top of that motion.
gotcha.
Okay.
So I did that a lot with Wally. You know, I had different, like if I wanted to raise his eyebrows and say Wally, I could do that. Or if I wanted to raise his eyebrows and go woo or whatever, then, you know, I could
Right.
had individual things that way. So I could, because trying to program everything and remember every little motion. And you know, I think this goes into what David was talking a little bit earlier about Wally. There's so
Yeah.
much going on with him. And to me, you want to have the head fully puppeteered to be able to, and that's where like that gets kind of old, like he's talking about of saying Wally, if we could do that whole entire thing. But a lot of times when I say Wally, sometimes I want him to be looking down at a kid and just raise his eyebrows.
Right.
So it's trying to learn the little things of trying to bring him more to life than just what, you know, the sounds and stuff that the film did.
So Matt,
Yeah.
for me as well, that's really good, like a safety thing. Because David, and Matt, you've probably done the same. Is where you're thinking, I'm going to raise his arm or his eyebrows and play this song. You're looking at your remote, going, right, I'll move that and I'll press that. And by that time, some kid could have come running in. So except for that one button press, doof, you
That's
can-
where Wally has to become, and you guys will find this out once you start puppeteering him, is that you've got to know that remote.
Yeah.
When you pick it
Yeah.
up to be able to operate him, because he was meant. I mean, when they did him, there were 3 people at Disney operating him.
Right. Right.
And now we're trying to do this with a single person, and it gets difficult. But you want to be able to not have to take your eyes off of that robot
Yeah.
while you're operating him, and that's where, you know, trying to come up with the buttons is why we did that.
Especially, I mean, for yours, where your Wally now will have neck movement, like neck up and down movement, as well as head tilt left and right and eyebrows and, you know, the normal head turning and nodding. If you want him to say something and he's going to move his head, tilt his head, you know, move his neck up, tilt his head and raise his eyebrows all at once.
No, we haven't
like
even
the
figured out
natural
how
thing.
how we're going to do that yet. I haven't been home long enough to play with those 2 added movements of where I'm going to put them. You know, do they need to be puppeteered, or can I put them in a motion bank?
Well, that's what I would think is like, if you have this is, you know, Maestro set up to where you can have him do this really expressive phrase and it's moving all of these servos at once, but you can automate that. And then now it's a single button on your controller. That saves a ton of, you know, brain power when puppeteering. You can still do your custom stuff interacting, but when you want to give that big, like, you know, just super smooth motion, you can just hit that and he can say the phrase you wanted him to say, be moving his head at the you know, the way you wanted to do, and basically 6 things are being controlled all at in one sequence with the push of a button. That's what I see as
That's what makes the Maestro so unique in that. And it goes the same with R2. I mean, all of his functions now can be, you know, controlled through the Maestro, and you can set all your safety limits on those, so you're not burning servos out. So, you know, that's gonna take some learning for people to do, and we'll have to go through. I know Badley's done a lot of things on the Maestro and learning how to program those. So that's something new to the group that, you know, several other people are gonna have to start learning. But to me, it's a really simple system to use once you start learning to use it.
right.
So we'll go through a little. So so you can see the screen change.
Yep.
So you're seeing now, this is the button page, or what we call the button values page. This is where you'll be able to set actually the Kyber system can see what your controller is outputting or your transmitter is outputting. So if you have 15 buttons set up like this, whenever you first get the system, you'll power it up, and then you'll go through set all your channels on your remote, and we'll go through and do a custom video of that later on and try to go through each one of those steps nice and slowly. But once you get it set up and working and communicating, whenever it comes on, you're going to get the resting value of what that channel is seeing. So normally it's going to be 172 is what you're going to see. And then when you push button 1, the S-bus value is going to change. So then that button can be any one of those buttons you want it to be. If you wire this up on, like I did in the latest video, you wire 10 buttons, but you wire them up in an odd order on the board, then you can make button 1 be the right bottom button. And that's what Wally, the control system, will see as button 1. So then you enter those values into each one of those areas there that you'll designate as your button, button 1, button 2, through whatever list you have. And then once that's done, you hit the save to memory. It stores those values, and then you can start programming the droid after that. So then you'll go to the button 1 page, and the difference in between button 1 and buttons 2 is that you can have another channel that is controlling. So you'll see up here, you've got the RC channels that we've actually added to this because we've added the volume. Button, you can choose which channel you want to be your button pad, your toggle switch, and your Wi-Fi and your volume. So channel 9 right now we have set to the toggle switch. And what that toggle switch does is switches between button bank 1 and button bank 2. So you go, and that's if you had, like for the mouse droid, I have the ability to change out Babu Frick and the Porg. So I have 2 different sets of sounds stored on that sound card. So I'll just switch button pad 1 I have set up for Babu, and then button bank 2 I have set up for the mouse droid sounds. So then you can go in and set what you want that particular button to do. So you would say, I want button 1 to play sound 1. So that's going to be, you would just put a 1 as your minimum and a 1 as your max. So that's only going to play 1 sound with that button. And if I wanted to control motions tied to that, then I tell it to play motion 1 stored in Maestro 1 and motion 1 stored in Maestro 2. If like you're doing for R2, you've got, the way I do him is a Maestro in the top, in the dome, and a Maestro in the body. So that I can tie those 2 motions to start at the same time. And then I was having a couple of things where I needed, instead of trying to get the things to align perfectly in the Maestros, I needed the ability to add delays into those. So say Maestro 2 the programming I didn't start, but it needed to start like 20 milliseconds later for Maestro 1 and Maestro 2 to line up. So we added the ability to add delays into those. So you can actively do that without having to go in and actively actually change your Maestro programming, which is a lot bigger hassle than just adding a delay here. And then you also can add, if the sound is not lining up to that, or you want to open the panels or move an arm and then start a sound, you can add the delay here in the sound also. So you're starting your motions and then you want the sound to start a second later. You can do that there. And then you can do that for all the buttons that you have. So if you want
in seconds or if you put like 0.1, how does that work for the?
You just enter, it's in milliseconds. So if you want a second, you would just put 1,000.
Oh, okay.
And then that would give you a second.
Gotcha.
So we also have the ability to add in. So in R2, the way I puppeteer him is I have like 5 or 6 things that I always like to play on him. And same thing for Wally, but Wally doesn't have as many sounds. So with R2, I've got 100 sounds stored on the sound card for him. So I'll put like button 1 through 5 will be what we call 1-hit sounds, which is usually his scream and, just a couple of the things you always hear him say. And then button 6, I would put, okay, I want to play happy sounds. So you could put that I want to play sounds 10 through 20 on there. So then you would just enter 10 in your minimum, 20 in your max. So that's going to play sound 10 when you hit that button. When you hit the button again, it's going to play sound 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way to 20. And then it's going to turn around and repeat and start back at number 10 for that particular button. And it'll do the same. So if I went to button 6, I wanted to play 21 through 30. That would be the sad sounds. And then you could play 31 through 40 and so throughout that. Or you could play 20 through 100 if you wanted to. And he'll just page through all those different sounds till it gets to the end and then go back to the beginning.
Can the sounds be activated on a motion without pressing a button? Like if you activate a motion or you move the transmitter stick, can the sounds be activated upon that movement?
No, we're not looking. We don't have any data that's looking for that.
It's just the buttons. It's all button control.
This is all button control, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
So with those sounds, Matt, does it have to be a sequential list of sounds it plays through, or can you create a manual list of, say,
But you would create that list by putting that list in your sound card. So if we go to, let's see if I can share that. Stop that share. Hey, it's me again. And we will go to here. So a unique thing we've done on this and been able to do, we did a lot of research with the DF player. Can you guys see that screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see we've got it named, start the sounds with 0001, and then you can go through how many ever you want on that card. So if you wanted a custom bank of sounds, you would just do that as 1 through 10, and then you would align those sounds how you want those 10 to play. So if you wanted it to go through a certain set, 02 would be the second sound you want to play, 3 would be the third sound you want to play. And you can actively move. So if you decide number 4 is not what you want, you just move another number 4 in there, and that becomes the number 4 sound. And then, so you don't have to load these in any particular order, any particular timestamp. All it is looking for are these first 4 numbers. So this allows you to put 1,000 sounds on your card.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then-
so you're
Okay, so-
you're customizing the order in how you name the file names, but the actual Kyber control is just looking at those sequential numbers. So whoever asked that, if you wanted your random sounds to be in a specific order, you would just organize them and name them in the order you want.
Right.
Yeah, but the problem there is that we have on the DF player, it's a limitation that we have. We need to have those numbers, and when we call a number with the DF player, it plays the number that we call, not a name. It's really a number. But I saw in the chat that someone was talking about the random. Yeah, that could be a good idea. We can add that to the code for sure in the later version. If you just say, okay, we want to play 10 to 20 in a random order, you just maybe click a radio button that this will be random. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, and it would page through those randomly until it played all 10, and then go back to a different random sound. So it wouldn't play the same sound over and over every time you hit that button. Could we do that? Or that's the problem I had whenever we tried to do random sounds. Sometimes it would end up playing the same sound 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, it's a random, but this can happen, yes, because it's not keeping track of the sound played in the bank. So it's really a random that is every time you push the button, it will be from 10 to 20 and play the sound that will come at this time. So
yeah, so
this can be added.
Okay. All right, I think, let's see, let's stop that. Let me look through the PowerPoint. I think that covered everything in the PowerPoint. I guess we can go to, so we can look at the actual system itself in the PowerPoint. Let me go back to that. So
If everything is making sense on how you will incorporate that into your droid, or it's not quite there yet.
So that's where I think looking at this page, you can actually see, so this is what you have to use to add this to your droid. You guys see the PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so main power, you've got your power input here. This is controlled, I mean, just, we send a plug that comes with it, you just wire it in to your power, so you don't have to go and search for the plug, unless you want to put this in multiple droids. The interaction to the actual RC is here, and I'll show another picture with the way the pin out. And then the 1/8" jack for the audio amp. And then you also have on the opposite side is the Maestro, the micro SD card, and then this is the programming port, which you will probably never need, but we put it there just in case. And then you've got the powered speaker output here. Let me share another screen that shows it actually, so you can see the controller a little bit better. So this is, and you can either order it with the box eventually, or you can 3D print the box. So this is the box itself. So this is the outputs here. So you've got the S bus is this first bank here. You've got the signal on top, 5 volts in the middle, and the ground on the bottom. So we try to keep that just like all your standard RC stuff is. The Maestro is in the center. This is where you have to pay attention to the RX, TX, and the ground. And then we've added this future development here that we're working on that will be for animating R2. So we'll be able to add a potentiometer to his dome that can tell where his center front is. So we'll be able to do free animation on R2. You'll be able to flip a switch and he'll go into free animation mode. So if you have him setting over somewhere to con, he can look like he's still alive and move his head and play sounds.
That would be awesome.
So that's future development. And then you've got your amplifier here. You've got your speaker powered outputs here. And one thing we did find out, we didn't do enough testing on, was that the DF player only has one speaker output. So the center right now won't be used if you get in on these first set of boards. You'll be able to power the speaker positive here and negative here. And then you've got the SD card and the USB port on that side. So that's basically the control system there. And then you don't have to have the box. You can use it. I know a lot of people like their electronics visible inside the droid. So you can just use, just order the electronics by themselves and not have to have the box that goes along with it.
Have you got mounting points for the box?
There are, so hold on, let me reshare that again. So what I did for that and what we can do, and if people do, we'll share the not the STLs, but the step files for this. What I've done is just put, I usually just put heat sets in here and just pass the screws through that. And then you can just mount, you know, the screws from the backside, bolted on through something. And that's what I've done on the mouse droid or anything that I use the aluminum angle frame in. The 2 of these holes line up to those holes, and you just do a longer screw through the heat set, and then you can just pass it through whatever you want to bolt it. I tried to keep it as small as possible because I don't know what people are going to be doing with them. The boards have 4 mounting points, so these screws go through the board that's on the inside of this box. So the board has 4 mounting points that you can mount to somewhere too if you're just using the board itself. And I'll show the board a little bit here in just a bit. Okay, are there any other questions? Hey, Dave, I see you now. All right. So,
We're just listening quiet.
being quiet. That's unlike Dave. All right, so I don't know if you can see that. So here's the actual board itself, and I can do one that's not. not connected to anything, so you can see a little bit more. So this is what you'd get if you just ordered the board, and you've got your connectors here. One thing I've thought throughout this, after I did these 3 pins on here, the bad thing about this is you can actually turn the plug sideways and you could plug it up and end up messing something up. So we're gonna have to look at maybe spreading these out. But again, we're trying to keep this board as small as possible. Maybe if we add a 4th one for something like the Pi programming, then that'll make that where you can't make that mistake. We did for right now, we have these set where you can unplug the ESP32 or the DF player, because if you could mess something up, this would be something that you would mess up as far as applying power to something that didn't need it. And the same thing with the DF player, they're sensitive on their voltage. So we made those where they're replaceable. Right now, we may find out we don't need that, and then we can do away with that and actually make the board smaller. And then you can see this is the onboard power supply here, which is an off-the-shelf unit. We decided to not build our own power supply because these had such a good track record. They have all the protection. They've been fully tested. And you start getting into a lot of, Trevor can talk about a little bit of that, of getting into some issues with using your own power supplies and on Wi-Fi. That's another reason we chose to use the actual ESP32 development board because of the Wi-Fi they have on there. It's already been tested and approved. So wiring this up, you can see right now I've got you've got your power coming in. I'm running over to just a 14.4 volt battery. So it regulates the voltage down to what the ESP32 needs and the DF player. And then I've got the receiver plugged in here through the S-bus channel, going into the S-bus of the receiver there on the bottom. And then I've got the Maestros plugged and wired in through this. And we'll talk a little bit more about those whenever we do some more videos on adding the Maestro system to the Kyber, because there is a specific order you have to wire them in as far as daisy chaining more than one together. But pretty simple. It puts you only pushing 3 wires up to R2's dome if you want to add additional stuff up there, plus the power that would go up to R2. So that was really easy. Another reason I decided to go with the Maestros.
So the Maestro, all the servos are hooked up to that, and it's getting power from the Kyber?
No, it does. The only thing it's getting from the Kyber, the Maestro is that it's getting the RX signals and the ground, the RX, the TX, and the ground. So we didn't want to put any voltage there because people would try to run all of that off of the Maestro or the Kyber. You can't do that. The Kyber gets it. The Maestros get their power directly from, I've got a voltage regulator here that's regulating down to 7.4 volts for all of the receivers. And you would want to do that if you're running 24 servos, you're going to want a bigger amp.
You have a separate power source, or is it split?
It's the same power source. So I'm running from the 14.4 and then, running into the Maestro. And then I've got another line running off of it that goes to the Maestro, that goes to this regulator that regulates the voltage for the servos.
Because I was looking at, I have that Mini 18, and they've got a 5-volt out on the back of it. I wonder if you could just run that to power the Pi off the Maestro.
You can do that off the Maestro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just want to make sure that you don't want to put power back. And we actually took that pin out. We did have that, so we can't even do that anymore. We actually took that away. So there was, whenever we had first started this, we actually had the option to power up the Maestro from this system. But I ended up burning a couple of them up by actually reverse wiring it in. You could actually power these up with a different power source, and it would jump that voltage back to here, and it was killing everything. So we took that ability away to save the Kyber. So yeah, once you power this up, you can use that 5 volts off of that to power your Pi.
Okay.
So that's a good idea.
Yeah, we tried to remove at least most of the error point that could happen.
Yeah.
And this way, if no power is coming from the Kyber to the Maestro, there's no way to put it wrong there. So it's a safety measure instead of burning anything.
Good.
Okay, so I guess another question that people had is where, are we controlling any of the movements of R2 through, or any of the drive system through R2 through the Kyber system? So the answer to that is no. So that's a safety thing too. We wanted, if anything failed in this system, we don't want it doing something to R2 that could drive him off a cliff or off a stage or any of that sort, into a guest or something. So all of that is done through the RC transmitter. So instead of running your drive systems through here, your drive systems are ran through your receiver on this side. So you could still use your transmitter, tie that to a channel, run your drive systems off of the receiver itself. You can still use all of these ports. There's 8 on this one that you can use to drive anything else you might want to drive. Your dome motor is going to be on here for now. We're going to eventually run that through here and then pass that through, run it from here and pass it through here to the dome motor so that we can have the ability to remotely control R2 or to have animations happen.
Yeah, some automation animation that we can do with the dome. And
yeah, but then you can still pass that through the system and be able to control R2's dome with the transmitter at the same time.
That was going to be my next question is, for instance, with Wally, where there are so many different points of articulation and servos and things that need to be controlled, you obviously need to automate that. The arms, you're not going to individually control his wrist and his fingers and all. You'll take up all your channels alone just with one arm. But
right.
For the head, for instance, that's something that I would think that you probably still puppeteer and all of that. But with this system, can you have it set up so that you can run potential head animations when you want, but then also control directly when you want to just be doing stuff on your own?
Stefan?
yeah, okay, yeah. This can be done with the pass-through RC channel, but we have some limitations because of the Maestro. Maestro, if you say you trigger a script to run and you're moving the same channel at the same time, the moving of the channel, we took over the script.
Okay.
So what I've been able to do with that is if you keep your stick center, it will not send anything to the Maestro. But as soon as you will start moving it, it will kill the script. So you have give and take on that. Yes, you can script the head moving. You can have those. Let's say you get three-way stick to do the head, and if you keep everything centered, then you will be able to trigger whatever script that you will want. But as soon as you will touch it, it will stop the script. It will take over.
Got it.
So yes, let's say you want to do some automation and keep off your end of the controller, it will work no problem.
Right.
So
yeah, that I wouldn't see an instance where you want to run an animation and then also be controlling. That defeats the purpose. So it was more of the ability to, if I have, for Wally, for instance, if I want to make him go, like this, when he says something, Wally says Wally, I can hit that. He'll do that as long as my hands are off. And then when he's done with that, I can go back to individually animating him, and it's
exactly.
seamless. The person watching him doesn't know that it went from a pre-scripted bit to back to individual interaction.
Yeah, exactly. So all the servo will be at center. So you will get at the head level, center, right, and the neck maybe halfway up. Mm-hmm. Then you will script whatever you want to do. If you need to take control over it, you just go ahead with the stick. And yes, this will work. This will work great.
Yeah. Stefan, would you say the what David was saying, would you have to center that particular stick before you did the animation?
Yes, because it will stop the by itself. It will never start the script. It will always take over. So right, let's say again with Wally, you have the three-way stick, one for the head, right, left, up, down, and the neck coming up and down, then if you let everything go, it should be centered.
Right.
So the script will work. But
Yeah.
if you go with the pot that you need to turn, if you're not pulling back to center, this part of the script will not work.
Right.
Then
See, that's the hard part with Wally, is that on the way I puppeteer him is that I puppeteer him with a free floating stick. In that I want his head to stay where I want to leave him at. And then
Yeah.
if I have him looking left and looking at someone, then I can get the animation to start that. If you're having to pre-center him and put him back where 0 is looking straight and his head straight, then you're losing that ability to communicate with someone unless his body's pointing toward them.
But surely then you could just use what we were talking about before about that stationary button where you can just hit that button. So if you're just, you know, where you say, Matt, where you've got your stick and you've got it down here, say, and you've got it down here, and then you're gonna have to try and get it right before you hit that 15 button.
Right.
If you can just hit a stationary button, everything just goes back to center, then that would work.
I kept all of his, so Wally is set up with, I've got his head left and right and up and down are just on control. They're fully puppeteered. And then everything else on him is animation.
Yeah.
All his eyebrows and, you know, all his hands and fingers and everything is all animation after that, except for his drive system. It's on the right stick. And it's your normal tank drive.
But
no, we
we
don't-
want the drive system on an animation button, do we?
Yeah, we don't have that issue with R2 in that, you know, we can do majority of everything with him, you know, and once we add the pot on there, we'll be able to do all of those things. But all of his stuff is animation, unless you do like pass throughs. And I talked to somebody too that was puppeteering the other day. They wanted the ability to pass through the arms, the utility arms, and do a nice. And the thing I like about that going through the Maestro is now you can add all of your smoothing and stuff through there and your speed control through the Maestro for that channel control. So now instead of getting, you know, a real robotic looking opening, you can get a very smooth opening of your utility arms so that you can actually wave and look more organic. So, all right. So I don't know what else I have to cover. I think that's everything I had. The thing we can talk about, I guess, a little bit is the modification of the remotes. So standard system, I mean, if you buy just, you know, the 15 button, it'll come wired. It's just the 15 buttons like this. I've got them on sloped buttons right now, just because I like the feel of that, of being able to find the different heights of the buttons. And then you've got the 3 wires coming out the back. I haven't done a video on this mod yet, but it's pretty simple to do. Print your box, insert this into your box, or, you know, you buy it pre-assembled like this, and it comes in the box itself to attach to.
More meats.
This is built for a
The
QX7.
meats are gone.
So
Cheese
that one
sandwich.
is pretty simple when it comes to that side of it. The other one is a little more complex. The one I did the video on, this is the 10 button. So you'll get this board. It's got your 10 button that you can wire in on the side, and then this is your signal. So you can customize any remote at that point to be able to add. So the one I've got for the scrubber, I've got the buttons on the back side, and then I've got 2 buttons here on top. So I've got the 8 buttons on the back, and then added 2 additional buttons here. And that's the one I just did the video on for the modification of a remote like this, except I use different buttons on the back side.
But you can do the 10 button chip and the remote and the 15 button on the front too, right? Couldn't you? You can do add them both.
You could just use 2 different channels. You would have to change that in your programming. So if you're using that for 2 different droids, it would just be set up in your control system here. And you would have to just swap over to that. You would have to go into the Kyber system and say, okay, now I want the button bank to be button 10.
You couldn't do it on the fly though. Like you couldn't do all of them together at one time.
No, I don't think we could do that. I mean, it's something we could look into adding another channel in there so that we could, I mean, it'd be easy enough to I'm talking for the programmer here. He makes it look all easy.
I think he's
Yeah,
just
but
nodding.
it's sometimes it's a give and take again. So we need, if we want to add this, I think we can do that. And there's no problem. It for sure it add a lot to the code, but I think we should be able to add more buttons. But at first we were keeping those at 15, and what we were saying is that even if you have the switch to toggle to the first 15 to the second 15 banks, just learning all of them, it's quite a feat.
Oh, and another thing you can do. So what I did add, I just thought about this. So here's something to your, so if you add this in, the problem with adding this, you would then have to run more wires from here. But there's a spot on each one of these underneath here that you can actually wire. So you could use this if you could get it inside the remote, and you could actually add 15 buttons to your remote. So instead of having to have the switches on the top, you could wire this up just like the 10 channel one, and it would function the same way. But then you would have to run more wire instead of just having the 3 wires going through.
But you can't have this thing on the front active and have a few on the back active.
Not without adding more wires to this.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
Currently.
But yes, if it's something that people want at the end, yes, we can add a second channel. We could still make it and see if it's worth doing it, because we are adding a lot. And since we will be able to add the button directly on the front to change 2 or 3 switches to give us 6 other buttons, I don't see really need to add that much.
No,
Yeah, I think he's just looking at, probably comfort of it's going to end up being comfort of the operator. Because I know Dave likes the buttons on, he likes especially when we're puppeteering BB-8, we need the buttons to be very reachable. And you can't, with this setup, you can't reach under and control at the same time. So we added, and that's where
I think it'd be nice to have a mix. I like some on the back, but then I'd like to be able to have the front one for, some other, I like a mix of it. So
That's why the 10 comes in handy, because you can put the buttons anywhere you want.
Yeah. And that's like on this one, I've got the buttons. This one, I've got buttons everywhere. I've got them. So now I can control the stick really well and then control the sides. But then I also have 2 buttons on the top of the stick that are just really easily reachable. And then you could add some to the back of these. I just didn't like once you get to using the twist sticks, you need the buttons on top.
Yeah.
That are easily reachable by your side fingers.
Matt, do you think how my controller has the dual sticks on it now, or the rotaries? Mm-hmm. You say you weren't sure if it would work with that setup?
With the QX7, it bumps into the box. That's the problem right there, is now your stick can't get a full range.
Okay, so it's just, I'll check mine. I don't know, because I have different, the knobs are different on mine.
But if you've got the little small ones, like the little metal ones that Dave has been using, then that one will probably work, because the stick is actually a little bit higher and that rotation may work over.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was some sort of electrical issue or if it was actually just the physical side.
No, there's no electrical issue at all. If you, like Stefan's saying, the problem we're going to run into is that the ESP can only hold so much programming. So we're going to end up running into limitations eventually, unless we can come up with some unique ways of programming it.
Okay.
As far as which RC transmitters you can use, I saw the ones that you listed that you've tested on, but theoretically anything that runs S-Bus should be able to work similar, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Should work without any issues.
Okay.
The only thing with the QX7 is that there's only 2 channels.
Right.
So if you're using it with, let's say you modify it with 2 sticks with three-way sticks, then you will be using those 2 channels. You cannot add any more buttons to it.
Right.
So
that's the limitations with the QX7 is now, if you try, especially like what you're talking about, Brian, you already have both of your pot sticks wired into those, the three-way switches wired into those pots for your twist stick. So you're going to have to take one of those loose to be able to hook this button bank up.
Okay.
No,
You know,
you see my screen, but I have one modified here. So I'm using two three-way. I'm using the 2 pot channel, but I have buttons here instead that I wire to the 3-way switches. So
That's a new addition we're going to add to the code.
Yeah.
And it'll probably come out soon. And so, Brian, what you could do is now instead you could leave that where it's at, and then you can add, there's another option where you can take a 3-way switch and turn that into 2 buttons, basically. Same way you did putting your buttons on top of the 3-way switches. You can take those 2-way switches and just wire one side in the middle to one button, and then the middle to another side, and you basically get 2 buttons that way. So you'll be able to take 3 2-way switches on your remote and change those to 6 buttons and not need this or the 15 button board. So that's where Dan was talking about not having to mod his remote.
Well, you'd have this. You'd be able to add 6 buttons plus the 2 on the sticks. So
You could still use the 2 on the sticks as part of your button matrix. Yes.
and depending on how many three-way switch you have on your remote, you could still add. Maybe we would go up to 4 three-way switch that we can use, so it could give you up to 8 buttons. Yeah, we can do that.
And then you still have the toggle switch on there to be able to swap those 8 to another bank of sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So you could still have a potential of 16 at, yeah.
Matt, do you use any of it currently for your animate? Are you using it for animations for Wally right now?
So we're using the beginning of what this system was in Wally. So it's the same exact system, except now we've just shrunk it down and added the programming ability. We were having to do everything through code, but now we've added the web interface. So that allows us to do all of that now through the web, instead of having to plug him up and change something every time. R2 uses the same exact thing in all of his, so all of his animations are controlled with Maestros and controlled with this system. And then I just added it to the mouse Droid. And I've also got it in the 39.1 because I wanted to just add, it's a, easy way to add sound to him. It's not the most economical way to add sound to a small robot that doesn't need, the motion control, but it's an easy way to do it. Especially
on the X7, on the 15 button, the one that you've got on your remote there, how have you physically attached it to the remote? Have you had to gut that little?
So I haven't come up with a really easy way, and that's where I hope the community comes up with ways to modify the remotes to add these buttons. But this one just has a hinge on the backside that I just take and glue to the remote itself. So it just hinges open, so I can still get to the power and I can get to the trim pots here, and then just close it down. It ends up, being very.
Does it just go over that? Does it go over that?
Yeah, I take and just grind that down a little bit, just hit it with a Dremel, and just get that flat, and it just goes right over that, right there, and just kind of covers half the speaker up that's on the QX7.
That's cool.
So maybe somebody can come up with a better way to attach these a little bit later on to make it a little bit easier or more. It's not an easy, it's not as simple to install, but it works, it functions.
Let's say after this mod, you won't sell it as brand new.
Yeah.
Really, you can put it anywhere. It's about putting it in the most convenient for however you're puppeteering.
It is. In the beginning, we said this came about. It's been a little over a year ago. We were at BBAZ, and I had printed all these things. We print most of that weekend. We spent printing different add-ons to the remote. It's like, okay, let's try it here, or let's try it over here, or let's try it up top. And then Carrie actually said, "Well, how about you put it in the middle?" I'm like, "Wow, that's perfect." So that's what.
I'm using one of them ones that McMaster uses. The ones that you can get in from China, and they've like a little It's like a telephone thing with loads of white buttons. And
Yeah, he does the ones on the side, or he has them on the back, and then the ones they use for Disney, which is Mike Cena's sound system. He uses the switches or the buttons on the bottom, which uses another trans. So the cool thing about this is that you don't use any additional power. You're not using any other transmitter.
Right.
Everything. This goes directly through the RC transmitter. So you get good, confident sound. Know when you hit a button, you're going to get something out the other end.
But the way of modding, the best way of modding the remote, it's the way you will use it. That's it. And it's only a matter of, okay, I like it this way, and there's no better way for it.
Right.
Each people will have his own way of doing it, and that's like Matt did in his video. It just took a drill bit and drilled a couple of holes, put switches, and it worked. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's where, I mean, I know everyone's comfortable. I mean, I know Sam's done a lot of R2 driving and stuff, and he's going to be comfortable holding his remote in a certain way and already having where he activates his sound and stuff. So, it'd be good to see how other people, take this system and incorporate it into their transmitters.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part is if you've driven it a lot, you kind of know what for Wally, for me, how I have it set up is my right stick is his drive. So that's how he goes forward, backwards, left turns and all that. And then I don't have fancy arms yet, but his head goes up, down, left, right. It can tilt side to side, and then his eyebrows. And the controller I have, my left stick is, up and down, left and right. And then I have a little top, knob. It's not a pot. It's actually like a stick that returns to center, but that's how I can do his tilt. And then I have a button underneath that I can trigger the eyebrows. And I set it up that way so that his whole head is in my left hand, so that my right hand can be, if I'm hitting a sound to say hello or woo or whatever, I can be pushing that with my right hand while I'm animating.
While you're animating. Yeah. And that's the same way I did what we did is
right.
If your right hand is free, he's doing all the sounds and stuff.
Yeah.
Sounds or animations. And then I'm always trying to puppeteer the eyes and his head with left hand.
Right. Yeah, but that's why just the idea of kind of with Wally specifically, where he does have all these accesses of movement, to be able to have him say a phrase and just have all that programmed through the Maestro, where you can be controlling him individually and have him, ooh, wow, yoo-hoo. But then when you want him to say, well, Wally, you can make him, Wally, and you're not going to do any of that. You're doing, oh, here's his big, hello, and he animates away, and then you can get back to the little individual stuff.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. We need to get one in your hands and see what you can do with it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the other question is, what are we looking at for pricing, and when are you guys going to be able to start sending stuff out?
So what we're going to do is I have 17 that we're not going to call it a beta test, because every beta test I've ever done has been a huge flop. It's just like we can't get people to, they just want the stuff, and then they get the stuff and they never do anything with it. So, this is going to be a buy-in beta test, if you want to say. It's going to, you're going to get in on the first set around. And what we want is people that have functioning droids that can get it installed, within the next couple of weeks or whatever. And let's test this thing and see what else we want to add. And then that's why we started the community, is to, be able to get feedback in one place and everyone understand, what we're trying to accomplish and what the thing can, and if you're happy with it, if it works like it's intended, I think it's going to be really simple for everyone. And two, we won't have to get the manual totally written up front. We can work with everybody and find out what the best way to write the manual is going to be, to get it programmed. So
That's all.
Pricing has been unreal on trying to come up with what we want to be able to sell this thing for, and try to keep it economical for everyone. So we're going to do the main board. It's going to be $250 for the main control system itself. We'll do this button bank for $50, and we'll do the other little controller board for $20. So that doesn't come with any boxes, 3D printed. It'll come with all the files that you can do, that you can use, that you can print. You can modify them. There'll be step files, so you can do whatever you want to fit into whatever droid you want to fit them in. And then as far as the buttons go, right now we only have this design. If there's future ones wanted, then we can look at having those manufactured if it looks like there's enough call to have it. I mean, to get boards manufactured now is really simple. It's just the time that we take to design them and then get them manufactured. So, I mean, does that seem reasonable to everybody as far as a price point?
Yeah,
Yep.
that actually sounds really good. Actually, good board especially.
Yeah, and I mean, we were looking, we were told, you know, hey, you guys should sell this, make some money on it. But I figured it alienated too many people to try to sell this for $400 or $500. I mean, I know some of the other systems you can spend, you know, $1,000 on to get the control that you're wanting. But it just didn't seem right and fair to charge that much for this system. And we may find out that, I mean, we need a little bit more later on down the road to cover cost of manufacturing. But if not, then we're going to keep it where we start at and hopefully help a lot of people out instead of trying to make money on it.
Yeah, I think we prefer to have, let's say someone has 2 or 3 Droid and want to have one installed in each of them, so it will not be not problem to get 3 boards and have everything working. So
Right.
that's exactly where we want to get out to the most of people. And plus we have people working with this. I think that the system could really come really great.
So if any of you guys, I mean, you guys will get first dibs. I mean, if there's anyone on this chat that wants one, message me personally and let me know you got, and I'll know if you have a droid or not. So, you know, let's get those put in. There's a couple of people on the chat that already have them. I know Brian's got one, Keith's got one that I know he started installing his last night. So I'm interested to see, you know, where he is on that one. Dave's got one, of course, Stefan's got one. Then a couple other people I won't mention have got theirs. So hopefully they'll get theirs and get theirs tested and see how.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any other questions?
Matt, when can you take my money?
I'll take it today. And that does not include any shipping. So shipping will be whatever. So I know the few I've sent to the UK so far have been $45, I think, for shipping.
I'm out.
You're out already. So what we'll be able to do is more than likely is we'll look for a UK distributor, or Stefan can ship from Canada for I think $10 or $15. So we'll decide what the best shipping rate is, this route is, to save people money because shipping sucks. But,
Yeah, I was going to say it didn't cost that much when Stefan sent stuff to me before. So
yeah, so that's the worst part about it. And then packaging that'll be included. But I've got to get a bunch of. I don't know. I hope everybody's board that I sent worked because I didn't put them in an ESD bag. So we'll see if everything survives that way.
Mine's working so far, but I haven't. I just connected to the Wi-Fi.
So I'm going to get some ESD bags to get those put in to ship just the boards themselves. Hey, Mark, about time you joined us.
Sorry, I do apologize. I've been busy.
Glad to see you.
How's everybody?
Good.
Tina?
Good.
Good.
Hey, Brian, were you able to hook to the Wi-Fi and test the web interface?
Yes. Yeah, I did it on my iPhone and it worked. Yeah, it was working fine.
Yeah, it's not the best way to do that on the phone, but it worked. It should work. It's HTML5 based, so I try to keep it simple as possible.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll try it on my laptop, but I wanted, I was talking about earlier, I wanted to start with just a sound file and see. But yeah, it was all good.
Good. Perfect.
So Mark, one question. I think, do you think you'd be able to get the 15 button panel, but without the buttons mounted in, so you could route them to various?
Sure. If you want the buttons just with the resistor bank wired in, then yeah, that's simple. And I think we could do that for the the same $20 as the other one without.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I have them now and then.
And we thought about sending these unassembled, but I don't want to get to the point where something fails because someone didn't solder something correctly that we send out. So, I mean, I know we could make a mistake too, but everything we send out is being tested before we send it out to make sure that it functions.
Yeah, did you guys have a source for the individual buttons?
I do, yeah, those are coming from overseas, China. So Mauser or nowhere has them really, so they're just from off eBay. You can buy, there's a place there you can buy thousands of them at a time.
Okay.
And then we can change though. The reason I chose those because they were easy to feel and just nice and big, and they're kind of compact that I could get 15 in that zone. The smaller ones to me were too small because we could have put more buttons on there, but then you start running into muscle memory at that time of trying to remember what button goes where.
You have can you show me the back of the controller again, where the buttons were, how you mounted them on the back? I just wanted to see how you did that.
So the one I did for steel is I did different buttons than this one. This one takes a lot more modification in that you have to, I use the same button that's on there and I just took and cut out a square, but then you have to drill 4 holes into the remote to get that to set in. You have to glue this in and then wire it from the back side. But I like this one better. The one I did for steel, when you actually, I did these buttons. So they actually, when you set the remote down, you actually hit some of the buttons.
Yeah.
On this one, you don't. This one, whenever you set it down, the profile is low enough that it doesn't hit one of the buttons when you set it down. And then, I just took and put this one inside there.
Okay.
Instead of putting it inside. You could put it inside the remote too, but I did it here because it made more sense instead of having all these wires run into the main body of the remote. Is why I put it there. This way, there's only 3 wires run into the main board, except I did wire 2 in here. So the same way as the video that I did.
Okay.
So, any other questions? Oh, and I was going to show you the Pico Switch. So this is the switch we use and it's just it ties up one of your channels. So it's just that way you can trigger it off the RC remote. And that's the big one. It's the same company. This is called a battle switch. It has more amperage capability. This one is just the smaller one of the 2. But this one is just good enough. If you're going to use it to trigger a solid state relay, then the small one is fine. There's no reason to buy the bigger one. And just trigger your solid state and then run your power here.
Matt Senna did a video tutorial on that. I can't remember when it was, but it's on his YouTube channel. Exactly that, flicking your power with the little Pico switches and your solid state relays. It's a really easy watch, isn't it?
Yeah. Who was doing that?
Mike Senna.
Mike Senna. Yeah. Yeah. This is where I got the ideas from.
And this way, if you lose contact with the RC remote, it will come in just in a fail state and it will shut down the drive. So it's really.
And that's all in your programming of your receiver or your transmitter and your receiver. So safety is big. And if you guys aren't paying attention to safety, start paying attention to it. Because before, something happens, we want to keep this community where it is and no one getting hurt and injured. So if you do lose, set your fail safes on these remotes. Whenever you cut your power on, set your fail safe mode. Don't turn that thing off. So, if you want your sticks to be centered, have them centered, and your remote will let you know that it's not centered. And hey, I need to flip this switch to make sure it's not going to do something crazy before you fully activate that receiver on the opposite side.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I hold my hand up.
Yep.
When
I've done it too. I'm just like, click the buttons, you stupid.
I've done it. Last night I was setting when I'd set up Wally's tracks and I got him moving for the first time. I don't know what I'd done. I just must have lost connection. Luckily, he was pointing in the right way, but tried climbing one of my walls.
Hey, I ran over Nyla the other night with my mouse drill.
Oh my
I don't
God,
know
you
what
didn't run
happened.
into me. You ran into me. I was in there in the ball, and this thing took off, and I have a big old scuff mark on the freaking panel. And I'm screaming, he's laughing. I'm just like,
It was horrible. It scared me total. But
And
I was
so-
in the
and so
process
now-
of setting those fail safes, and I had the stick triggered when I cut it on. It was like full bore when it opened up. So,
And so now my mission is to now keep checking to see if your Wi-Fi is going to be on this Kyber Control system. So we're warning all of you, turn your freaking Wi-Fi off when you're in the convention. You don't need to be running it. Because
the
you only
good
have
thing,
8
she's
characters
gonna-
on that password.
yeah, she went through that, and we cannot, you can't actually take control of the droid from the Wi-Fi, which is good. So, I mean, you could change some of your settings is basically all you could do, but haven't heard, go through this and make sure that we're safe on that side. It's been good. It's an extra addition.
Yeah, at first it was not made to make an add-on to drive the droid. That's not all. It's really made to do the panels, the arms, and all the animation. That's it.
Yeah.
So everything.
Animation and sound is all and simplicity of control.
And we want to keep the safety of RC at the base of that and not modifying anything for the drive system. So that's it. That was the first mandate that we take on this one.
Matt, one
And
of
then
the
you're,
things, one of the things that I was just pondering there with you're talking about Wally and being safe and such, not running somebody over, but you could do a mix where you always have to hold a momentary switch for the drives to be active. And then if you let go of that, the drives would immediately die.
That's where I've got, we can, and on that, brings up another question. I know people have talked about, using the system I came up with on adding the wired remote system. So we are going to look at adding those a little bit later on, but that's got basically a dead man trigger. And I know a lot of the R2 people actually use those that actually have to press a button before R2 can actually drive. And then you release that to drive. But that's where, like on this one for this droid, that's where I've got it set up to that Pico switch. So with Wally, I take and actually have to, a switch would actually be better, or a press button would be better than the switch, because I'll cut him on and it's connected to the little red dot on Wally. And I know, and this is coming from Mike Cena, he did that too. If that red dot is on, his drive is on.
So the momentary switch, and they said a dead man switch. As soon as you let go, then those drives. So somebody could come and you just let go, or you drop the radio, for example. And it's not
actually a good idea, because if you drop the radio and the stick shook, it could actually, make the droid.
But this is something that can be easily programmed in the remote.
Yeah,
totally separate.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Because that would be as simple as, you just put that Pico switch on a button. So whenever you push that, it activates the solid state relay, and then you can drive. And then if it lets go. So yeah, I'm gonna change mine to that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, you could just put it on like you said, just a push.
That's what I've got it on now. Yeah, you would just change that switch out to a button.
Yeah, to keep hold of it all the time. Is that what you're saying, Matt? Keep hold of it. Yeah.
Or put it on a momentary. They make them where they're not clickable. They're just a momentary hold, and you let it go. It goes on.
Yeah, but I don't think, Matt, this should kill the Pico switch, but because every time you will push it, you will give power to the Maestro. And
you would be given power to only to the Pico switch and to the solid state relay, and then powering the Sabertooth. The only thing with that is it takes the time to power the Sabertooth.
Yeah, and I think at the end it could maybe break the Sabertooth. So the better way to do that is that you have the switch to turn on the relay, and you have the push button just to enable the drive.
Yeah, that's what I was
will be
thinking.
programmed
They talked
directly.
about that. So Cena and McMaster and or anybody that's done the active stuff for the parks, they don't want that because they want to be able to totally kill the saber tooth in case something went wacky
No,
with the saber
that's,
tooth.
that's good. That's good to keep the Pico Switch to kill the saber tooth, but not every time you want to drive it, because I think at the end it could break the saber tooth. The best way is like having the Pico Switch, then the button. Once you press the button, then you can activate the throttle.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, but it will be a mix directly in the remote. I think that would be the best way to do it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it'd be double redundancy kind of in a way.
Yeah.
But then that's
Yeah,
done. You're
a
mixing
full out kill switch that actually kills everything, but then also one that just
the dead man switch that's through the mixes. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well,
I feel like I'm gonna have to update a lot of because right now I'm using one of those relays, like 30 amp relays for that have the garage door clicker. I feel like I'm gonna want to update that. I'm gonna need to get some maestros going for Wally, especially because right now I just do everything by hand and it's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. Any other questions?
I was just wondering what's on that button board. Is there anything on it other than the buttons?
No, there's resistors. It's just a resistor, bank of resistors. That's it. No power required. Well, except for powering like a standard potentiometer power for the resistor.
Right. So I noticed when you on yours you had the buttons mounted on the back of the remote, and I was wondering if you got rid of the board entirely to mount them on the back of the remote, or do you have the board still tucked in there somewhere and you just have the wires like running from the board to the switches at that point?
Yeah, so this one, it's on the back. It has the 10 button board in here. So that's this board. And I did that just because it was small and fit in the remotes that I had currently to get them in. It fit in the DX9 nicely in a little spot.
Okay, so does that small board take over for the other board that the buttons are attached to?
Correct. Yeah, you would just use this board instead. But like John was saying, you can order this board too. If you wanted to order this one and just stick it somewhere inside the remote so you could have 15 buttons.
Okay.
You could place this somewhere in there and to wire it up the same way as the 10 button would wire up.
Gotcha.
And I did a video
Thanks.
on that. I don't know if you saw the video on modifying the remote for that particular board.
I'm halfway through it.
Okay.
You're at the drilling spot.
Time to drill. Hey, Mark's got new curtains.
They're not new. I took the other ones down because I've had to
look at
put one in a
that.
put one in a frame.
Nice. All right, if there's no more questions,
floral side.
if there's no more questions on the Kyber stuff, I'll stop the recording and then we can all stick around and chat if there's anything else.